My name is Lee Benz. I'm the Homescholar, and I wanted to help you today to come up with class titles. They're actually one of those important things about creating a transcript, and the reason is they can make the difference between a boring cookie cutter kid having a standard nondescript education that doesn't raise anybody's curiosity versus a homeschooler with a unique transcript as a unique individual, somebody that has interesting classes that make you think, well, that's really cool. Wonder how they manage that, right? So it's all about the class titles. A perfect class title is educational and descriptive and concise, has to be short enough to fit on the line, but very precise. Okay, so it's perfectly accurate, and it has to somehow convey a serious education. So that's a good one. Let's talk about what a bad class title is. A bad class title has a number on it. A bad class title is too limited in scope, very boring, way too broad and general, repetitive, not descriptive enough, or so descriptive that it's too long to fit on the page. Okay, let me give you some examples of what a bad class title might be. English 1, English 2, English 3, English 4. English 9, English 10, English 11, English 12. You see what I'm saying? It's like boring and repetitive and way too general. And what is in English anyway? In fact, one college said to me one time, I see all these kids from public school. They're coming to college and it says English 9, English 10, English 11. The kid can't read or write to save their life. What are they learning in these classes? English is way too broad. You can use bad class titles to your benefit, though. Like if you're putting together your transcript, sometimes trying to come up with the perfect class title makes it too intimidating, especially for a perfectionist, me, right? So sometimes you can use a bad class title just to get her done, right? I'm making my transcript. I did English this year, putting down English. Could call it English 9 because it was in ninth grade, That is a great way to use a bad class title because you can go through and you can modify it later after you have overcome the blank page and written your transcript. Then go back and modify your class title with a more perfect one later. Now, one more thing about bad class titles. A bad class title will include the name of the curriculum in it when that name has nothing to do with the actual class. So for example, if you say Apologia Biology, I gotta say, love Apologia Biology as a curriculum, but Apologia is the curriculum name. It's not the name of the class. The class is Biology with Lab. You look at your curriculum to give you clues, right? Like, oh, it says Apologia Biology. This must be my biology class. So you're looking for it for clues, but you don't include the name on your transcript. So it doesn't say Saxon Algebra 1. It doesn't say Classical Conversations 1. It's more specific than that. So you don't say Not Grass. You don't say Sunlight. You don't say Challenge 2. Those are examples of things that you don't put on your class title. So instead, just to be clear, what you say is biology with lab, trigonometry, world history, American history, British literature. You see how those are specific, but not too long, right? They fit on a very short line on your transcript. Now, perfect class titles then are, again, descriptive, long enough, interesting enough. So let me give you a few examples. If you're not using English 1, English 2, English 10, English 11, what are you using? Okay, so some examples might be literature and composition. Now, I know that those sound like really scary words, so let me break it down for you in the Latin and Greek roots, okay? Literature means reading books, right? And composition means writing words. So when you say your English class includes literature and composition, that's great. Okay. If you bought a curriculum that had the word grammar on it, and that was a major component of your English class, you might call it grammar and composition. If that year you were studying American history and you used a literature-based curriculum, chances are you could call it American literature and composition, and it would still fit all on one page. You could call the class essay writing. There's a lot of options for you that don't name the curriculum, but are very specific. So let's talk about social studies classes. What would you put if you're not going to say not grass history? What are you going to put? Well, instead of saying social studies 9 or history 10, you might say American history, world history and geography, current events, 20th century world history. So those are some examples. Now, sometimes you have to kind of decide whether a class is going to be one thing or another. So, for example, if you have a child that loves the violin, for example, how do you know? Is that going to be a fine art class or is it going to be a music class? You just make a decision. So your class title can say music, violin with performance. Or your class title would be in a music category because you have like 6 other music classes, and then it would just say violin with performance. Okay. And that can help you to decide where are you going to put the class in music or not. So there are some decisions that you have to make with things that are delight directed learning. Is, for example, is violin a fine art or a music? But you might want to be thinking about, is PE going to be an elective or its own category? Is Bible going to be an elective or its own category? Are excess classes in English or math going to be called an elective or put into the math class, right? Those are all the decisions that you get to make. You get to decide whether your transcript is arranged by subject or by year. So when you are homeschooling, you determine your homeschool policy, right? You are the professional educator. In my classes, I'll often have people type in, who is the professional educator? You are. Okay. So if you're listening to me right now, I want you to type that in. I am a professional educator, right? Just name that. You are. You get to decide on your policy. All high schools do things differently, and you get to do things differently too. You get to decide on your homeschool policy. When you're looking for some inspiration, let's say you're totally stuck. You have no idea what to call this thing. All you know is that your daughter is doing crochet all day long. Okay. What do you call it? Well, one thing is to do a Google search for high school or public high school with the words crochet and see what pops up. And you'll find some great class titles that way. So look at public schools, private schools, trade schools, especially if you have a kid that really likes to work with their hands, auto mechanics or shop or something. Look at a community college catalog, especially if you have a techie kid and you can't quite figure out what technical classes is he learning as he's coding. And look at the course description for those different schools and say, is that kind of what we're doing? And if so, that's a really good class title. So for example, let's say your child really does love crochet. Okay. You're looking up public high school, you're looking up crochet, and then you find different class titles that public high schools have done, like things I've actually seen with my own eyes from a public high school: contemporary crafts, crafts 1, somebody called it, or textiles, arts and crafts, anything to do with fabric or knitting or, needles of any kind, or creative stitchery. I love that one because then it's like, oh, whatever, just sew and have fun, and it's a high school credit. I love that. So when you're thinking about Bible classes, it can be even more challenging because you're trying to get class titles that are educational and very specific, but aren't preachy. They just say what it is, not that you have to believe it too. So, some common examples for Bible classes, even things that used to be quite common in public school, include New Testament, Old Testament. In Christian private Christian schools, sometimes they'll go deeper than that. They will include maybe the epistles of Paul or biblical worldview or biblical studies. Very common in public school is a class, not common, used to be common and is now still sometimes seen, is Bible as literature. But again, in the more Christian circles, they might have a class called worldviews, or at a private college or private high school that is not necessarily Christian, they might have a philosophy class or a religion class, whereas a Christian high school might have Christian life classes. Okay, so all of those are examples of good Bible classes. Now, you can also have a variety of class titles for more vocational skills. I was looking with one of my Gold Care members. We were looking up some class titles for her son and the things that he was doing. And we started to realize that there was a vocational high school in her area that taught collision repair technology. How cool is that? It's not like I work on beaters. It's collision repair technology, automotive technology. You could even do a variety of health careers or even have a class on the overview of health careers, construction careers, cosmetology, culinary arts, cooking and baking. All of those things can have their own specific class title. One last thing, I wanted to give you a big tip about class titles. If you have a very special college in mind and you're trying to endear yourselves to them so that they will love your student more than anything, one thing that you can do is to make your transcript look as familiar to them as possible. So when they read your transcript, it's just like being at home. Okay. So to do that, you look at your number one college and you look at what their class titles are. So if they say U.S. government with a dot between each one, that's how you write it. But if they just say U.S. government, no periods at all, you write it like that. Or maybe they call it American government, not even US, or maybe they call it United States government, right? However they say their class title, you can imitate that in your class title. So you can use their catalog as your favorite source for class titles to make your transcript look as familiar and understandable to them as their own college catalog does. Okay, so just remember, when you're thinking about your perfect class titles, they're descriptive, they're written in educational ease, they're concise and precise, but they don't name the curriculum. Okay, they just name the course, not the curriculum, and they convey a serious education, even when it's something like working on beater cars or knitting and crocheting. Okay, I hope that really helps, that you have figured out how to write the perfect class titles. And if you ever need any help, I'm here for you. Have a great day. Take